Look, up in the sky. It's a bird, it's a plane, it's Superman. This famous quote was first started in the original Superman TV show, The Adventures of Superman. Comic books have been depicted in TV and films for several decades, but have become a part of American culture for the past few years. Today, we will review evolution of comic books, understand their impacts in the modern age, and dive into the relationships I had with comic books throughout my life. Comic books have had a very interesting history. The very first form of comic strips started in the 1920s. Superman and Batman were created in the late 1930s. World War II had a huge impact in comic books industry in the 1940s. Comic books were a huge source of propaganda, and characters such as Captain America made their way into the pages. By the 1950s, superhero comics had lost their appeal to the American public. During the 60s, 70s, and 80s, comics began to make a comeback, but with lots of controversies. New superhero groups were formed, such as the Avengers, but many companies began stealing ideas from one another, leading to big writers leaving and starting their own comics and companies. Comics also faced new restrictions on the content that they could be shown on books. By the 1990s, comic books were struggling, writers' stories were lacking, and the storytelling fell flat. As we move into the 2000s, the impact of comic books in the modern world really began to take shape. From 2000 to 2008, technology had a huge improvement with CGI, making the stories brought from the pages of comic books seem real. That officially brought the cinematic era of comic books. The Marvel Cinematic Universe was created through Disney with their first hit, Iron Man, and began franchise characters and teams, which created huge fan bases and introduction of superheroes to those who were not familiar with them. The race to gain rights and different comic books worlds began, with movie companies buying and sharing characters. Because of the success has had with other comic companies have tried to copy them. DC Comics have been trying to get in the Marvel train for the past decade, but constantly keeps falling behind. However, where they were lacking in movies and blockbusters, they make it with popular TV shows and animated movies. It seemed that I was ahead of my time, as I have been a huge fan of comics since I was 13 years old. Superman was the first comics I read and is still my favorite. He was a character I could relate to. It may seem cliche, but Superman was so much more than just the Man of Steel. Clark Kent was trying to fit into a world he didn't belong to, in which is something I can relate to. I have been very shy and quiet my whole life, and trying to fit in was difficult. Being able to relate to someone who has similar struggles really helped. Superman, the Fantastic Four, Green Lantern, and The Flash were one of my favorite books to read. I love diving into each of the universes and saving the world with the characters. Comics have been a huge source of enjoyment for me in my life, and I feel as I have gotten older, I have grown with the culture movement of comics. Through time, comic books have evolved what they are today. There is no limit for comic book nerds, and wearing and representing your favorite superhero shirts was cool. You don't have to look up to the sky to find Superman. He and all superheroes are around you.
I would clap, but I'm holding the camera.